Dolan did this.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Fantrax and Basketball Monster. And today's episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast is also brought to you by Draft, a daily fantasy app where your chances of winning are almost 3 times better than on FanDuel or DraftKings. Download Draft from your app store and go to playdraft.org or go to playdraft.com and enter the promo code LOFANTASY when you download to get the 100% match deposit bonus up to $600. Today's podcast is also brought to you by our Patreon sponsor, and that is, I'm sure this is a fake name, Fail Sonny Corleone. So, Fail Sonny, which I'm sure is not your real name, thank you nonetheless for being a Patreon sponsor of the show. Head across to patreon.com/redrock_bball. My name is Josh Lloyd, and as always, you can find me on Twitter at redrock_bball. There were 12 games on Wednesday, but the dumbest shit that happened in the NBA was at Madison Square Garden. Off the court, when Charles Oakley got into a fight with security guards, smacked one of them in the face, got ejected, got arrested. Didn't go to jail, but just more weirdness, which I'm sure we're going to hear more about. I'm not going to delve into the Charles Oakley, James Dolan rift. It was just an odd thing to see come across the timeline. Charles Oakley trying to fight James Dolan has been ejected and arrested. You guess what? The NBA continues to be the gift that keeps on giving, but we've got other stuff to talk about.
Let's get to it.
All right, Michael. The monstrous line of the night goes to Andre Drummond of the Detroit Pistons. Drummond was fantastic. This was always shaping as a good matchup for Drummond heading against the Lakers. We know that big men can have the ability to destroy them, and Drummond's got that ability in him quite often. He just occasionally just sits back and doesn't do much, but that wasn't the case here. 24 points on 19 shots, 17 boards, 3 steals, 4 blocks. So doing it in all the areas that you want him to do it. Yes, I know he missed all 3 of his free throws, but if you own Andre Drummond, you literally do not care about that because you know that you're punting that category. Oddly enough for Andre Drummond, over the last 2 weeks, he is the 10th ranked player, even if you include the 45% shooting from the line on 3 attempts, which is a massive, massive negative. Because in that time, he's averaging 18 and 15.5 with 2.5 steals and 2 blocks per game on 58% shooting. One of the things that's really declined from Drummond recently, or not recently, the last couple of seasons, has been his field goal percentage. Back before Van Gundy was hired, he was a 62% shooter. 51 last year, 51 the year before that, 52 last year, and at 54 this season, but he has bumped it to 58 these last 2 weeks, and has definitely been on the uptick, but beware, if you're owning Drummond, you're punting free throws. It is almost impossible to become a winning squad. You might be able to get yourself back to average, but what's the point in that? To get yourself into a winning squad with Drummond on your team in free throws, it's impossible. And I'd like to know where the people who own Drummond are in roto leagues. There'll be some, and punting in roto is becoming a little bit easier to do. It's still not something I recommend, but it is becoming a little bit more possible, especially in 9-category roto leagues. Punting is definitely more achievable in 9-cats, and the more categories you have in a roto league, the easier punting becomes. But let me know where the Andre Drummond owner in your roto league is sitting at the moment. Are they up the top? Are they in the middle? Generally, if you're punting free throws, you can get to 3rd, you can get to 4th, and that's not that hard to do. It's getting from 4th to 1st that becomes the challenge. I wouldn't be shocked if the majority of the teams that have got Drummond are in that 3 to 5 range. That's my early prediction, but I'd like to hear it from you guys and tell me how your leagues are going in that sort of a scenario. All right, let's hear from our sponsor today, and that is Draft. Draft, you know what it is. It's a daily fantasy app. It's a new style of daily fantasy app, and I already know that you love playing fantasy and you love playing daily fantasy, but Draft merges the seasonal and daily fantasy aspect of the NBA together, because what it is, it's snake drafts. It's not salary cap situations of forming a roster by trying to get players under a specified amount of money. You're doing a snake draft against multiple people. You pick 1, he picks 2, they pick 3, and back and forward like that, and assembling your squad that way. And that makes the chances of you winning on draft a lot easier than some of the other sites, just because there are no preset lineups that can be put into it. You're not battling against people who have fine-tuned their algorithms down to the nth degree. You're in a snake draft where randomness happens, as you know, in your seasonal league. So you have, with all your knowledge and all your backing from listening to this podcast and your membership of Basketball Monster, you know all these things, and you should be able to dominate these snake drafts. Plus, on draft, what they've got now for the good people that listen to this podcast, a 100% match deposit bonus up to $600. That's a huge bonus. That's one of the best initial deposit bonuses in the daily fantasy sports world. It might even be the best. I haven't looked over every single one, but it's got to be pretty much up there. $600. So you put in $600, they'll give you $600. You put in $200, they give you $200. You can play for free or you can play for cash. Draft is the new way to play daily fantasy sports. So go and download the app. But when you download it, to get that 100% match deposit bonus, it doesn't just come to you easily. Well, it is easy. It doesn't just come to you for free. You've got to put in 5 seconds of work into the promo code LOFantasy. That's it. That's not hard work, but it does tell them that you came from listening to this podcast, and then it gives you that additional 100% match deposit bonus. So download the Draft app, whether it's from the iTunes App Store, from the Google Play App Store, or from playdraft.com, and use that promo code LOFantasy to get yourself a 100% match deposit bonus today. All right, the waiver wire line of the night. This guy is one of the streakiest players that is going around the NBA, and it is CJ Miles. Yes, he's the starting shooting guard for the Indiana Pacers. He had 23 points. He had 6 triples, 4 rebounds on 7 of 11 shooting with a block. Great, fantastic. The game before, he went 8-3 in 20 minutes. He is as up and down as they come. He is a good source of threes, I'll give him that. In the last 5 games, he's had multiple threes in 4 of them. But it's not enough to make him a must-own guy. If we look back over the last 2 weeks where he's playing 28 a night, he's averaging 12 points with 3 triples. And he's shooting 50%. But one thing we know about Miles is he will not shoot 50%, so that will come down. But he's a great option for streaming threes. He occasionally gets steals, although that's been well down for him this season. But what he is a threes streamer. And that's literally what he is. He's a good free throw guy that doesn't get to the line, so he doesn't really help you there, but he hits threes. And while he's hitting them at a good rate, that's great. 48% over the last 2 weeks, 42% on the season. Great stuff. But that's literally all he's going to be a benefit in, is in 3-pointers. And if that suits you, do it. Because he is starting, but he's going to be up and down. We've seen this throughout his entire career. We've seen this season. Plus, he's just as likely to miss time with an injury. He gets as many injuries as almost anybody in the NBA, and they generally cost him weeks at a time. That's just the way that he seems to go. But we want to look at his overall value. There's nothing there apart from threes. So add him if you want some threes. Stream him if you're desperate for threes. But that's about really where it sits with CJ Miles. The young gun of the night, Karl Anthony Towns again. 29 and 14, an assist, a steal, 2 blocks, a perfect 13 of 13 from the line, and 8 of 14 from the field. In the last month, he is the number 1 player in 8 category fantasy leagues. 28 and 12.5. A 111 with 2 blocks, 3 assists, 60 and 83, crushing it. He's going to be a first-round pick for the next 10, 12 years, you would have to imagine. Nothing more for me to say about Karl Anthony Towns except that slow starts happen to a lot of people, and he is turning it around and he is repaying his owners in a very, very significant way at the moment. The dud of the night, Nerlens Noel of the Philadelphia 76ers. Wasn't a good Nerlens night. 4 and 5 with an assist and a steal on 1 of 4 shooting. And this, we must remember, is a game without Joel Embiid. In the last 2 weeks, he has only played 21 minutes a night, and that puts him outside the top 130 in rankings, averaging 7.5 and 4.5 with 1.5 steals and a block per game. I don't see any upside in Noel. Yes, he can be useful. He can put up those defensive numbers, but there is no upside for him. I don't think he's getting traded. If he got traded, I don't think he's going anywhere and playing 30 minutes. And Jahlil Okafor getting traded doesn't impact him. So owning him is not an easy thing to do. Yes, the potential for those defensive numbers is nice, and they can turn around. But at the moment, he's just struggling to get anything really going. And with such a limited upside and limited production, if you're in a battle for positioning, in a battle for a playoff spot, in a shallow 10-team league, you're better off moving on from Nerlens Noel in most of those cases. Yes, he could step it up a little bit, but I just feel that there's going to be a cap on him for the rest of this season with the presence of Embiid and potentially Okafor sticking around as well. So it wasn't a great Nerlens night, and it's been a pretty rough stretch for him recently as well. All right, let's move into these games now. talk about them in a bit more detail. The first game we're going to take a look at is the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Indiana Pacers. Kyle Korver out of nowhere, 29 points, including 8 triples with 5 assists. Do not let this performance, or don't look at this and go, man, I got to grab him because Iman Shumpert's out, Korver went off. Yes, Iman Shumpert was out. Yes, Kyle Korver went off. No, those things aren't necessarily linked. Korver played only 26 minutes, so he wasn't taking all of Shumpert's minutes. Shumpert doesn't take shots anyway, so it wasn't like he was just taking all of Shumpert's shots. Korver went 10 of 12 from the field. He went 8 of 9 from 3. That's why the line looks good, because he got into a ridiculous rhythm and hit shots at a huge rate. So it wasn't like that he's just going to be playing 34 a night moving forward with Shumpert out, or as long as Shumpert's out. He played his same role. The shots just went down in a completely unsustainable fashion, which is pretty obvious if you just look into the line a little bit, a little bit deeper. If you look into that, it will show that to you. Now, the Cavs are looking to rest Kyrie, LeBron, and Kevin Love all for the next game. So with as few players as they've got on the roster, he's going to have to play 30-ish minutes and take a bigger role offensively and defensively. So, streaming him in for Thursday could absolutely work. It could definitely work. But if you're looking at this and thinking that's going to be something that continues for the rest of the year, I reckon you'll end up disappointed. Kyrie had 29 with 7 assists. LeBron had 25, 6 and 9 with a triple one. And Kev Love had 14 and 10, also with a triple one, although Kevin Love's came on 3 of 11 shooting. And Jandre Liggins did start in place of Shumpert. 16 minutes, 8 points, 3 steals. Don't expect much more than that from Liggins. He can get you some steals occasionally, but that's about it. While Tristan Thompson had 6 and 10 in his 35 minutes. For the Pacers, Jeff Teague with another big night. Teague has been fantastic this season, basically just finished Monte Ellis' career, really. 22, 5 and 14 for Teague with 2 steals and 3 triples on 50% shooting, while Paulie George dropped 22, 8 and 6 with a pair of steals and a pair of threes. So some big nights from their better players. Miles Turner's been struggling a little bit. Just the 16 points with 7 boards in 40 minutes, no blocks, no steals, and 4 of 10 shooting. He's still been great for the season, but he's just been struggling a little bit. And the guy that I said I wasn't going to mention, I do have to mention him, Monte Ellis. 13 points in 24 minutes, 3 assists on 5 of 7 shooting. Don't think that that's a resurgence. Don't think that it's meaning we're going to get more Monte Ellis moving forward. It was a good night, it was a hot shooting night, and it won't last. Lavoy Allen started out hot. He had 6 and 5 in the first quarter and ended the game with 6 and 5. He played 23 minutes replacing Thad Young and got a little bit found out towards the end against the Cavs. He's a short-term guy, obviously, whilst Thad remains out of the lineup with that wrist problem. The the San Antonio Spurs and the Philadelphia 76ers, Kawhi Leonard returned. He had 32 points on 50% shooting and had 6 boards and 5 assists, while Dan Green did his stuff in the peripheral categories, 3 triples, 2 steals and a block with 11 points in 25 minutes. Exactly what Green is expected to do, exactly what you hope that he would do. Not a must-own 12-teamer though. LaMarcus had 15 and 10 with 2 blocks, and Dwayne Dedmon getting another start, 10 and 11 for Dedmon in 26 minutes with a block. This is what I predicted from him when Powell first went down. It didn't happen. They went with David Lee, but now after Pops sort of realised that Dedmon's the better option there, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing Dedmon start. Now, does it mean that he is a 12-team league guy? A performance like this is, but he could just as easily play 20 minutes in the next game. One thing I know for sure is I don't want to be owning David Lee in 12-team leagues. 14 minutes for Lee, 2, 6, and 4. He could go back and he could start and he could play 24 minutes, but he's just not reliable enough, and we are seeing a definite switch towards Dwayne Dedmon. Tone Parker dropped 18 and 5 in his 30 minutes, while Pat Mills just the 5 points in 18 minutes. Remember when Patty Mills was a 12-team must-own guy, even with Parker around? He has dropped off in a big way. For the Sixers, Jahlil Okafor. I give the guy plenty of shit, but I'll give him some credit here. A really good night from Okafor. 20 and 8 in 25 minutes. 2 blocks. 91% from the line on 11 attempts. 10 of 11 from the line. Ridiculous for him. He doesn't get to the line that often. And he doesn't shoot that well, anywhere near that well. And 50% from the field. A really good night from Okafor. Doesn't change my outlook on him if he gets traded or anything like that. This was just a very good performance. that you keep in the back of your head, but his upside is so limited to me that he's not worth a stash. Dario Saric had 20 points in 21 minutes on 8 of 11 shooting with 4 triples. It was a good night for him. And the old theory of Sauce Castillo, shit as a starter, good as a bench player. He went back to the bench, played 32 minutes and had 16, 7 and 7 with 4 triples. It really has been a weird thing with Stauskas this season that whenever he starts, he just really struggles. But when he plays on the bench, he does a lot. Weird stuff. Really just a deeper league guy. Bob Cove had 18 and 6 with a pair of steals and a pair of threes. And TJ McConnell's form has definitely dipped. 6 points, 5 assists and 3 steals. Although the news coming about Ben Simmons is putting more cloud on whether he actually plays this season. Still no timetable, hasn't done 5-on-5. And they said they need 5 days of him doing 5-on-5 before he returns. So we're still a distance away. You want to keep holding McConnell in most cases. Ersan Ilyasova had 11 in his 28 minutes, and Gerald Henderson, who started in place of Stauskas, he was Gerald Henderson, 6 points in 23 minutes. Washington and Brooklyn, the Wizards, after putting up that Game of the Year type performance against the Cavs, went to overtime against the Nets. Braddles Beal, 31 and 6 with 3 triples, a good night from him. Same with Marcin Gortat, who played 41 minutes as well, 14 and 14 with a steal and a block. But in terms of Gortat, Jan Mahinmi returned. He played 12 minutes in Mahinmi, 2 and 5 in those 12 minutes. So what does that mean? Well, it means he's back, finally. First game for the season. But Gortat is not going to be able to play 36, 37 minutes a night once Mahinmi gets up to speed. It won't be until after the All-Star break, I don't think. But including Gortat in trades, if people think he's going to maintain this top 50, top 40 type of production, would be a good idea, because I think he slides to a top 80, a top 90 maybe guy, with the minutes potentially dropping off. Markieff Morris was out of this one, so Kelly Oubre started, and he couldn't have been more of a zero if he tried. 33 minutes for Oubre, 0 points, 3 rebounds and 1 steal. I actually managed to cash in DFS with both Oubre and Michael Carter-Williams in a lineup today, which pisses me off, because if they had have just been normal and it's not scored in single digits, then I would have had a real chance of bringing home the GPP. But unfortunately, they gave me 4 and 6 points, I believe, for the two of them. But he couldn't have been any more of a nothing. He had a usage of under 9%, and Otto Porter slipped into that bigger usage role. Still wasn't great, 18% for Porter, but 20 and 10 with 3 threes and a steal. He just needs to be more involved. I just don't understand why they just don't get him the ball more often, although he did take the 3rd most attempts on the team, which is a start. Johnny Wall wasn't getting the shot going, 7 of 24, but ended up with 23, 6 and 12. Had 2 blocks, a steal and a 3, so a good night from him, while Jason Smith off the bench provided the spark, 15 and 8 in 23 minutes. Smith's been actually useful this season, a deeper league useful, a 16-18, but more than what you would have expected probably heading into the year. For the Nets, Rondae Hollis-Jefferson, getting a peg on what this guy's minutes are going to be are impossible. 31 minutes here, so he started, played 30, 21, 20, back to 30. You just can't get a handle on it. And when he plays 30, the numbers have been good. 13 and 11 here, 2 assists, 1 steal, 71% shooting. That's obviously a 12-team league player. But will he play 30 minutes? You have to guess no. But who knows? Who knows what Atkinson's going to do? One thing I do know that Atkinson's going to do is that whoever he plays as the backup point guard is going to play more minutes than the starter. We had it again. Spencer Dinwiddie started, played 16 minutes. Isaiah Whitehead off the bench, 21 for 7, 2 and 2. But obviously these are just deeper league players. Well, Trev Booker's having a little bit of a resurgence in this bench role. 14 and 11 in 28 minutes for Trev with a block. Probably more a 14-teamer. Wouldn't be looking in 10s. And I'd consider him in 12-team leagues with this little run of form. Karis LeVert was back. He played 26 minutes. That's a positive. 9 and 5 with 2 steals and a block. It's not really getting it going. The rests, the limits on minutes, the production, it leaves him as a 14-team league guy for the time being. I'm actually interested in what Bojan Bogdanovic is doing, though, which is not something I'd normally say. 21, 5 and 4, 2 steals and 2 triples. He's been a little bit more consistent, probably still more of a streaming standard option and a 14 must-own, but he is playing a lot better, while Brookie Lopez had 20 points in his 32 minutes. Also, shout out to Randy Foy, who's still starting, apparently. Denver at Atlanta. There was no Manny Mudiay, who looks like he'd miss a couple more games, so Jameer Nelson started, but Ken Fareed returned, and that pushed Fart and Will Barton back to the bench. Not for long though, because Ken Fareed sprained his ankle and Barton came back in and played 38 minutes and had 17, 7 and 7 with 3 steals and 2 blocks. Yes, it came on 6 of 19 shooting, but really racking up the stats. And this is what Barton can do. He can also go absolutely missing, but if Fareed is going to be out and he left the arena on crutches, you'd have to expect he's going to miss some time. If he is going to be out, then Barton will start, and Barton is definitely worth owning in that situation. As is Wilson Chandler, obviously, who had 24, 8 and 2 with 4 triples and 2 steals. And Jokic didn't get into too much foul trouble, played 34 minutes, had 18 and 15 with 3 assists and 2 threes there. Jameer Nelson struggled in his 31 minutes, only the 6 points, but did have 8 assists and 1 steal. But man, some of his misses were terrible. They were just like, Jameer, can you just stop shooting? Fine for assists, but not providing too much more apart from that. For the Hawks, Dennis Schroeder, your guards going up against Denver do a pretty decent job, and Schroeder was exactly that. 24, 5 and 10 with 3 steals, while Paul Millsap bounced back with a 23, 6 and 5 game on 60% shooting, and Kent Bazemore also dropped in 14 points, but he only played 21 minutes. He battled some foul trouble. He had a pair of steals. He is fine for 12-team leagues despite my protests of him not being a good player. But he does produce occasionally enough to be useful in that sort of a setting. Timmy Hardaway also started. He had 14, 2 and 6 in his 38 minutes. While Tarbo's out, fine. Just don't expect consistency out of him. Dwighty Howard had 11 and 13, while DeAndre Bembry was the first sub off the bench for this team. 10, 4 and 2 with a block in 17 minutes for Bembry. Still yet to hit a 3 in his NBA career. But he's looking like the better option between him and Prince, and I like what he can do in terms of his fantasy game for future seasons in dynasties. I like his abilities. The Lakers and the Pistons. Brandon Ingram played 27. This was a blowout, by the way. Brandon Ingram played 27 minutes, 15, 4 and 5 with 3 triples. A good shooting night. Now, if you can deal with some poor shooting nights, which are definitely going to come with Ingram because that's just what he does. This was a good shooting night, but most of them aren't. But I think the production will be decent enough to consider grabbing him on a flyer. Lou Williams dropped in 17 in just 21 minutes, and D'Angelo Russell struggled for the second consecutive game. 23 minutes for Russell, just 2 points with 5 assists and a steal. So he's still getting you those assists, and I definitely wouldn't be dropping him. Julius Randle played the most minutes he's played in quite a while, it feels like. 30 minutes for Randle, 17 and 6. And with Randle getting those minutes, Larry Nance went back to 19. I'm not really sure what to make of Nance. He had 30 minutes in each of the 2 previous games. But in this one, it was Ivica Zubats who played the most minutes out of the 4s and 5s that weren't named Julius Randle. Now, Zubats wasn't awesome. He played 22 minutes and had 5 and 2 with 2 blocks, while Tariq Black had 8 and 10 in 19 minutes. So there's going to be those 3 guys getting those minutes at the 4 and the 5, Nance, Zubats, and Black. But Nance is still the better option, but he's not a strong 12-team ad. You absolutely can if you think they'll run that similar lineup that they did prior to Nance's injury, where it was him and Randall playing a lot of 4 and 5, and I believe they should do that quite a bit because it worked well, but there is some unsureness with that. Uncle P only had the 9 points in 20 minutes. No reason for him to be a 12-team league guy, I don't believe. For the Pistons, the point guard situation is getting messy. Reggie Jackson only 23 minutes, 4, 2 and 8, while Ish Smith played 21 and had 10, 4 and 7 with 2 steals. Ish getting 20 plus minutes means his assists are useful enough to stream and maybe even hold short term even in 12-team leagues. As for Reggie, you just hold at the moment, but it's been a definite decline in his level of play and his minutes. Speaking of declines in level of play, Marcus Morris couldn't keep up what he was doing, unsurprisingly. 14 points on 14 shots with 6 boards and 3 assists, and KCP only had 9 points in 28 minutes. Toby Harris only played 24 minutes but did have a good night, 19 and 5, while the tackle box had one of his better games as well. John Lua with 20 points in 34 minutes. Lua is a back-end 12-team league guy. I still believe Harris is a guy that you want to own, but it's obviously a situation to monitor with all those players there. The Utah Jazz and the New Orleans Pelicans, the Jazz smacked them, 33-point victory, so we had minutes spread all over the place. 7 Jazz players scored in double digits. Joe Johnson, Rudy Gobert, Alec Burks, Derek Favors, Dante Exum, Gordon Hayward, and Georgie Hill all in double digits. Joe Johnson, the pick of the bunch, with 27 in 24 minutes and 6 triples. It was a hot shooting night, so don't read too much into it, but Joe has been fantastic for this team recently, and the play of him and Alec Burks is preventing Joe Ingles from becoming a standard league option while Rocket Rodney Hood sits out. Joe played just the 22 minutes and had 3 points, so it's not the same situation as it was when Hood was out the first time. As for Favors, he backed up his best game of the year with a solid game, 12 and 6 with 2 assists and a steal. He still only played 25 minutes, so there's still some concern there, but if you want to go and grab him and think that he's turned the corner, go ahead. Nothing wrong with that at all, and yeah, it might even be something that I think is a pretty solid move. Dante Exum showed some big flashes here. He's shooting 50% from the field in the last 2 weeks and had 11, 3, and 5 in his 23 minutes. Remember back a few weeks ago, a month ago, he wasn't playing at all. He was DMP-CD. Behind guys like Hull Neto and Shelvin Mack, and he's moved ahead of those guys, and now he is the backup point guard again. Really good stuff from Exum, showed some good explosion, some good offensive instincts, some good passing, and that should give people who own him in dynasty leagues a real boost, because he's been pretty poor for most of the season. But we must remember he is coming back from an ACL injury, and it takes a couple of months of competitive basketball to get back into it. So we're like 3 months back. Well, he's had 3 months back, so maybe we see a stronger Dante Exum through March and April. Not enough that's going to be standard league ownable by any stretch, but a jump forward in what he can do and a good glimpse towards the future. Rudy Gobert pulled down 16 boards while Alec Burks had a nice 13 and 5 night in his 23 minutes. For the Pelicans, Anthony Davis only scored 12 points on 12 shots, but 10 boards and 6 blocks helps you out, while Terry Jones had 35 minutes for 21 and 8. Fine to own Jones as long as he is starting. He just won't have nights like this all the time, so expect more disappointment from him, but the occasional outburst he has is probably worth holding on to in majority of cases, not going to be all of them. Tyreek Evans was out, so Tim Frazier got dusted off, and he played 24 minutes, 11, 3, and 4 for Timmy. I don't think this means he's just going to stick in the rotation moving forward, but while Tyreek is out, he's going to have that deep league value. Drew Holiday had 15 and 6 on 58% shooting, but weirdly missed all 3 of his free throws, so not a good night at the line, while Etuan Moore dropped in 13 in 19 minutes, and Bud Hield continues to struggle, 8 points in 19 minutes, but there is no reason why Alvin Gentry, yes there is, he's a dickhead, but there's no logical reason that Alvin Gentry shouldn't have just been giving Buddy these junk time minutes and getting him on the court and getting him working through some stuff. I don't understand it. The Los Angeles Clippers and the New York Knicks, good victory for the Clippers in the end. Good to get the victory. Should have smashed them, obviously. Blake Griffin was magnificent. 32, 8, and 5 with 2 steals and 2 triples, as was DeAndre Jordan, who had 28 and 15 with a pair of blocks. And Jamal Crawford, another good night. 20 points on 58% shooting. He is shooting out of his brain at the moment, and that's turning in these huge fantasy lines. There's no way that it can continue. He's a 40% shooter who's shooting at over 50% recently. It's not going to continue, clearly. But while it is, get some assists, get some points, not a problem. Just be aware that it is going to dip. 14 and 5 for JJ Redick, and Austin Rivers scored just 7 points, but dished 10 assists for the first time in his career with the Clippers and had a steal. He is a guy to own. Ray Felton moved back to the bench and played just 21 minutes, while Luke Marmute played 26 in the start. Now, I don't know if this is a permanent thing, or if it was just a Marmute starting to match up with Mallow sort of scenario, but it's one to watch. If Felton's back playing 20 minutes on the bench for 2 consecutive or 3 consecutive games, then piss him off. For the Knicks, Jeff Hornacek.
My name is Jeff.
My nemesis. Kyle O'Quinn played 25 minutes and had 18 and 6 with 3 steals and 2 blocks. I like O'Quinn. There's probably no bigger cock fan than me. But the consistency of Hornacek is infuriating. Billy Hernangomez was the flavour of the month. But in the 2 games without Joakim Noah, he has played less than in the games that he played with Joakim Noah. Only 20 minutes for Billy here, 5 and 9 with 4 assists. Missed all 3 of his field goals, whereas O'Quinn went 18 and 6. And of course, we just got the token Marshall Plumlee appearance. 24 seconds of Marshall, for what reason, I have absolutely no idea. I would still be okay with owning Hernangomez. O'Quinn's more of a 14 to 16 team league guy, but we're just never going to be able to have consistency at this position. I guess it mirrors the entire Knicks organisation. Hornacek just will not stick to a pattern or will not do anything that seems logical. Porzingis getting back in business here, 27 and 6 with 4 triples and 2 steals, but really foul trouble is limiting him a lot. And 28 and 9 for Melo with a pair of blocks also. And Derrick Rose, 27 and 8 with a steal. A good, very efficient night from Derrick. Now, we talked about Brandon Jennings the other day. He played 27 minutes. He was sharing the court with Rose. Played 17 in this one. So, again, reliability on him is obviously not very high. Fine to own him just for those assists if that's what you're desperate for, but don't expect this 25-plus minute role moving forward because it is Jeff Hornacek. The Miami Heat and the Milwaukee Bucks, the Heat just strolling along with another victory, and not just a victory, a smashing almost 20-point victory on the road against the Bucks. Jimmy is indeed our only son, and to cap off a huge game, he had a Richie Beno.
2 for 2.
20 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 threes, 2 steals, 2 blocks, 58% shooting from the field. He'd had a couple of lean games, but he has been ridiculous for this team. There is no excuse for Spoelstra to not play Jimmy 30 minutes a night, I don't believe. He has to be owned everywhere. Hassan Whiteside with a big 23 and 16 night, and Wayne Ellington, who started for Dion Waiters, he had 17 points with 5 triples. That's what Ellington will do. He will score, he will hit threes, and then he will miss every shot, and he does nothing behind him to back him up in terms of, if the shot doesn't fall, at least he got 6 assists, at least he got 2 steals, at least he got 8 boards. He just does nothing. And that makes him very much a deeper league player. Scooter Magruder played 36 minutes, wasn't able to repeat his heroics from the last game, but still a solid 10, 6, and 3 night with 2 steals, just a deeper league type of player, while Tyler Johnson's in a bit of a slump, just the 8 points, but 4 boards, 6 assists, 2 blocks, still getting some other numbers, and that's sort of the opposite of Wayne Ellington. Yeah, if the shot doesn't fall and he was 3 of 11, he still gets you 4 rebounds, 6 assists, and 2 blocks. If Ellington's shot doesn't fall, you get 2 boards, 1 assist, no steals, no blocks. And that's the difference between those two guys as players. There's lots more differences, but the Milwaukee Bucks. Do you want the good news or the bad news first? Let's go good news, because Chris Middleton returned. He played 15 minutes. He looked fine. 5 points, 2 rebounds, 2 assists. I still think he won't get to 35 a night. Pretty confident with that. I think it's probably going to be a month before he even approaches 30, would be my guess. Maybe I'm being a little bit too conservative. But if you want to take the risk now, we've got All-Star break coming up, and grabbing Middleton, I'm sure he's already gone in your league, and you've probably grabbed him, which is a fine move, but I just don't know if he's going to be an impactful top 50 guy this season. He's a top 20 guy when he's fully healthy. I'm just not sure we see that this year, but it was encouraging to see him back on the court and playing in this role. Tone Snell played 34 minutes. Hopefully that's the last 34 he plays for the season. 6 points for Snell with 2 triples. Not much else there. His value is going to crater. I'll get to the bad news in a sec. Matty Dellavedova played 15 minutes, 5 points, while Broggo played 33 minutes, 6-2 and 6 with 3 steals for Malcolm Brogdon. Still got to hold on to Brogdon. We don't know what Kid's going to do because Kid doesn't know what Kid is going to do. Yanni had 22 and 8, 2 steals, 2 triples and a block, and his form has decreased definitely recently, while Johnny Henson in a start, only the 5 points for John in 26 minutes, but a nice defensive performance with 3 steals and 2 blocks. Absolutely worth owning in 12-team leagues as long as he starts, but this was another game where Spencer Hawes and Roy Hibbert were inactive. That could be the case moving forward. That is what I did think as they brought them over, that they'll just bring them over for salary dumps and they'll just sit their asses and not play them, and that has been the case so far. It's not a matter of the trade holding them up. Miles Plumlee's played 2 games for Charlotte already. The trade's official. Everything's fine. Unless they've got some issues sewing names onto the back of jerseys, I don't know. But I get the feeling that especially Hibbert, they're just not going to play for the Bucks at all. Now the bad news. Jabari Parker suffered a knee injury. It looked bad. It looked terrible. In fact, it looked very reminiscent of his ACL tear. It was a non-contact buckle knee injury on the same knee that he tore his ACL. He collapsed to the ground and had to be carried off the court by teammates, was unable to take his free throws. Bad. But the Bucks came out and said he's got a left knee sprain and we're going to have scans tomorrow. The x-rays are negative. Now don't look at that and go, ooh, that's good, because there's a couple of reasons. X-rays are negative. Cool, just means he didn't break a bone. No one had any concern that he was breaking a bone. That's not what we were looking for. X-rays don't pick up knee ligament damage. The last time that Jabari tore his ACL, very similar MO from the Bucks. Knee sprain. Next day, ACL torn. Zach LaVine, he's out with a knee contusion. Next day, and a torn ACL. These guys know if it's a torn ACL. The doctors can do that test pretty quickly and it's very accurate. They just don't necessarily release that info straight away. They'll want to confirm it 100% on the MRI. But to me, that's what it looks like. I'm not a doctor. I don't even pretend to play one in real life. But I would be stunned if Parker doesn't miss time. There's no chance of that. I would be mildly shocked if he's not done for the season. But there is still hope. There's some second, third-hand reporting that Parker apparently told John Henson, nah, just hyperextended it, I'm fine. I don't put any faith behind that. Not in the report, I'm sure Henson said that. But in the fact that Parker said that straight away, I don't really believe too much there. It definitely looks bad. I think that even if it's not an ACL, we're looking at 4 to 6 weeks would be my guess. Just a guess at this point. But that it's worrisome. Now, the immediate questions are, do I drop Parker? No, you don't. You don't. Just wait 24 hours and let's just wait and see what happens. Let's just wait. The second thing is, who benefits? Well, nobody. 5 people, 6 people. It's not a plug-and-play situation. There are very few plug-and-play situations in the NBA. It's going to be guys like Mirza Teletovic, who played 13 minutes. It's going to be Mick Beasley, who played 12 minutes and scored 11 points. It's going to be Jason Terry playing more at the 4 as Chris Middleton moves to the 3, as Yanni moves to the 4. It's going to be Malcolm Brogdon, who plays the 2 and moves Snell to the 3, or Middleton to the 3 and Yanni to the 4. So we're going to see bumps in Brogdon, in Terry, in Snell, in maybe Henson playing the 4, in Teletovic, in Beasley. That's where the minutes are going to go. They're going to go to everyone. It's not going to be Jabari Parker's out, Mirza Teletovic is in, and he's playing 35 a night. That just won't happen. Well, I can't say won't. I would be stunned if that happened. If they said, all right, Mick, you're in, 35 a night, you're playing the Parker role, let's go. They've got multiple ways that they can go. They can push Yanni to the 4. They can push Snell to the 3. They can run a Brogdon-Dellavedova backcourt with Terry and guys like that in there. Middleton obviously getting more. And that's another question someone asked me today. Do you think that now with this Parker injury that they'll push Middleton and make him play more minutes? If they were a competent franchise, I would say there is no chance of that. I'm not 100% convinced of this. But I do think that the guys in majority of management positions there wouldn't allow Jason Kidd to do that. We haven't seen any real scenarios of injury mismanagement in Milwaukee. We've seen it for other teams, New Orleans. We've seen it for other teams, Chicago. But we haven't seen it for Milwaukee. So I don't think that they will come out there and say, all right, Chris, you're in 35 minutes a night. Let's go. I don't think they'll do that because they're not stupid. Losing Parker, and they're already finished anyway. This season's done. They just can't win games. And Jason Kidd didn't show up to his post-game press conference because him and John Hammond had been having a discussion about basketball issues. The basketball issue they should be having a discussion about is, Jason, can you have a plan that lasts more than 5 minutes? Wouldn't be shocked if Jason Kidd didn't finish out the season. Would not be shocked. You know, that I don't think that he is a good coach. So lots happening for Milwaukee. It'd be a good idea to listen to Locked On Bucks tomorrow as well, just to hear their thoughts on the Hammond-Kidd interaction and the Jabari Parker injury, of course, as well, with Frank and Eric over there. The Phoenix Suns and the Memphis Grizzlies. Punch-on alert. Big punch-on in this one. Marquise Chris, Tyler Ulis, Troy Daniels getting ejected, Devin Booker and Troy Daniels, the NBA's unlikeliest rivalry outside of DeMarcus Cousins and Myers Leonard, getting into it with Booker throwing the sledge out there to him after that argument. Who does he think he is? He's played on 5 teams in 6 years and he's got the nerve to talk to me. You're in the NBA, mate. I reckon anyone can talk to anybody. Say whatever you want. I'm not sure if Devin Booker's really established himself as an alpha dog to be having that sort of an attitude, but this game got fiery. Don't know why, because the Suns were down by 20. But what I did like is that Marquise Chris played 23 minutes. That's a good sign. He had a 1-1. It wasn't a great night for him, 4 and 3 with a 1-1, but he played 23 minutes, so that's a positive. But more confusion just abounds. This game, Tyson Chandler only 20 minutes, 5 and 10, and we got Alex Len's a resurrection, 10 and 5 with a steal and 2 blocks. You know I like Len. You know that if Len is playing starters minutes, he's a must-own player. You know, if Len had a coach that wasn't Earl Watson, he'd be playing starters minutes. But I wouldn't be hyping this one up too much. Brandon Knight had 16 points with 2 assists and 2 steals. Fantastic, Brando. But he could play 17 in the next one. No ability to predict what this team is going to do. TJ Warren saw just 18 minutes for 4 and 4. I thought he'd turn the corner. Wasn't the case here. Booker had 20 points. It was a fairly empty 20, but he did get to the line 10 times and hit 8 of them and hit 46% from the field. Just no threes, 1 rebound and 3 assists and no defensive numbers. Well, Eric Bledsoe had 16 points with 3 assists. Not a great night from Bledsoe, especially with the 3 of 15 shooting. PJ Tucker had 30 minutes, 6 and 10 with 2 steals. And we had a report earlier in the day that Dragon Bender was out for the season. That got re-amended, and he's out for 4 to 6 weeks. I think that it's the perfect time to buy really low on Dragon Bender in Dynasty Leagues. I still think that he's going to be a better player than Chris. I think he's going to be a really impactful guy at some point in the next couple of years, and buying low on him now is a good idea. The Grizzlies, Conley had 23 and 31 minutes with 5 assists, while Jermichael Green, taking advantage of the fact that Zach Randolph was out, had 11 and 10 with 4 assists, and was a perfect 4 of 4 from the field for Green, not a 12-team league guy. Marcus Gasol, 19, 7 and 3 as well, while Tone Douglas played 25 minutes with Vince Carter resting, 11 and 4 with 25 for Tone, and Troy Daniels, despite mouthing off and getting ejected, had 14 points with 4 triples in 22 minutes. Chandler Parsons looked good. 8 points, 24 minutes, 2 triples, 3 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 blocks. The best number there is 24 minutes, is that it's just pushing up. We're not seeing 30-minute Chandler Parsons until March, would be my guess, but it could make a difference in your playoffs. I hope we see 30-minute Chandler Parsons because I know that he can be good. And he was terrible for the first month or 2 months of the season, but what we're seeing now is good production in limited minutes, and that's a positive. It's not a great positive, but it's still a positive. Toronto and Minnesota. DeMario Carroll's back? Nah. Still a good night from him though. 19 and 9 with 5 triples in 34 minutes. It came on 7 of 9 shooting, so you know that's not going to happen all that often. But it was still a nice performance from Carroll. More a 14-team league guy. Now, if I coached the Raptors and the game was close, and I had a center who had scored 16 points in 26 minutes, had not missed a single shot, and the game was somewhat of a shootout, I'd probably play him in the last quarter. My name's not Dwayne Casey, though, because Jonas Valanciunas did not play in the fourth quarter until the final 34 seconds. He was 16 and 5 on 100% shooting up until then. While we had Kyle Lowry go 6 of 19 and DeMar DeRozan take 25 shots and hit 12 of them. And DeRozan, that's good. 48%, 30 points, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. The Kyle Lowry dip is happening. 20 points on 19 shots, 5 assists and 4 triples. I'll never understand the mismanagement from Dwayne Casey. Speaking of mismanagement, Norm Powell did not play at all in the first quarter, the second quarter, or the third quarter, but played 7 minutes in the fourth quarter. So in the last 2 games, he has played a total of 0 minutes in the first 3 quarters and 19 minutes in the fourth quarter. If you can work that out, you're doing better than me and the majority of people. Now, Powell was not good. 6 points, 6 minutes, no stats, no points, no nothing. But the rotation makes no sense. Also, if you've still got any hope of Jared Sullinger, extinguish that. 0 points in 6 minutes for Jared. Bebe, 21 minutes for Bebe, 2 points as steal. Still can be owned in certain situations, but he is starting to drop off just a little bit. While with Patrick Patterson out, he's fine to just keep holding just for those defensive numbers, but his numbers have dipped just a little bit recently. For the Wolves, Wigo had 38 minutes, 31 points, but a really full line. 5 boards, 6 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, 58% shooting, 89 from the line. Exactly what we hope he can do. He's giving us more flashes of it this year, which does lead me to think that he will keep improving in this area. Gorgie Jeng had 11 and 9 in 32 minutes, but Tom Thibodeau made some interesting rotational decisions. He went with a backcourt of Tyus Jones and Lance Stevenson down the stretch, while Ricky Rubio and Brandon Rush sat down. Stevenson had 6 and 4 in 20 minutes. Jones had 5 points, 3 assists and 2 steals, including a huge 3 late to get them the victory in 27, while Rubio had 5, 1 and 7 in his 21, and Rush registered the solitary rebound. If Rush has not played well since being inserted into the starting lineup, he will likely stick there, I think. But in a 10-team league, there's no point. In a 12-teamer, see who's around. I still think he'll be better than this, but there's some definite competition here. Now, I'm not fazed about Jones playing over Rubio. I like Jones. I think he's really good. But we've seen this a couple of times for Rubio. Then he goes out and plays 35 minutes and has 14 and 14. I'm not overly bothered by this performance. It wasn't like Jones was brilliantly fantastic. It was just one of those weird fourth quarter situations that Tom Thibodeau gets in his head and goes, let's play the inferior guys. And I don't exactly know why he does that. Shabazz Muhammad had 22 points in 26 minutes, and as according to scripture, he did nothing else. 2 boards, 2 assists. Great scorer. Love the points. Really helpful in a point stream situation, but just doesn't do enough. The minutes aren't going up. He is what he is at this point, and that's a very, very good scorer, and that's fine. Boston and Sacramento, Amir Johnson, big minutes from Amir, 27 minutes, 14 and 5, 3 steals and 2 triples, but this is a horrible loss from Boston against Sacramento. Amir, there's no way we rely upon him at all. While Jonas Jerebko, who had been starting, played only 10 minutes with a face mask on, 2 and 2 in that playing time. Terry Rozier was abominable. Well, Al Horford had a fairly disappointing night, 10 and 6 with a 111. Isaiah Thomas, how did he go? Well, he did all right. 33 minutes for Isaiah in his return to Sacramento. 26, 4 and 7. 4 triples, 38% shooting. 10 of 10 from the line. And this is an example of when I say regression, this is regression. This is the regression I talked about. His last 3 games, he's still scoring 30 points a game, but it's coming on 45% shooting. It's not coming on this insanity that he was doing before. The 50% shooting he's been shooting for the last 2 months. This is the regression I talk about. When he goes and still scores 26, but he comes on 40% shooting or 42% shooting. And that's what's going to cause, I still believe, him to dip down. And we are starting to see that just a little bit now with these numbers starting to come down somewhat. Still a very impressive night, but not maintaining top 3 production. Marcus Smart, nothing much there. 10, 3 and 2 for Smarty. Well, Jaylen Brown played 26 minutes, had 6 and 3. There's no reason to deal with Jaylen Brown outside from the fact that the Celtics do play on Thursday and there aren't many games on. And if he starts and plays 26 minutes, not a bad use of a waiver spot just to try and get some extra stats in. Jay Crowder was not his best night, missed all 6 of his shots, 4 points with 2 steals there for Jay. For the Kings, there was no DeMarcus Cousins, so Costa Koufos started alongside Anthony Tolliver. Tolliver had 11 and 4 with 3 steals in his 37 minutes, while Koufos had 6 and 11 in 27, but obviously Boogie will be back in the next game, and that means nothing for these guys. Will Cauley-Stein played a backup role, but it was a good backup role. 14, 5 and 4 in 24 minutes for Cauley-Stein with a block. I still don't trust him. I still look at it as definitely like 16, 18 team league scenarios. But it was an impressive performance, while Matty Barnes, I think, should be grabbed in most leagues. 14, 11, and 4 with 3 threes and a steal. While Darren Collison was fantastic. He has to be owned everywhere, clearly. 26, 1 and 5 with 4 steals and 2 triples in 38 minutes. And the reason I'm so adamant on Darren Collison is because Ty Lawson had to leave the game with a hamstring injury. It doesn't appear overly serious at this point, but they said they're going to give him a precautionary MRI. There's no way he plays before the All-Star break. I would be so shocked if he played before the All-Star break. We heard Garrett Temple say last time, my hamstring's fine, 3 weeks. I think you got to expect 3 weeks for Ty Lawson, at least. And the Kings have literally no point guards. They have, outside of Darren Collison, they have no point guards. Ben McLemore started the second half and had 17 points in 30 minutes. A good performance from Ben. He's not a point guard. Aaron Aflalo's not a point guard. Malachi Richardson's not a point guard. Point scale, maybe? Are we just going to see 40 minutes a night from Collison? And then try and make do with Boogie handling the ball for the other minutes? Do they cut someone and sign a point guard? I don't know. Do they run Omri Caspi as a point forward when he's back? Or Matt Barnes? Like, what do they do? They're in a lot of trouble. There's going to be shit tons of minutes for Darren Collison, though, with Lawson out. And I am assuming that Lawson is out. The last game of the night, the Chicago Bulls and the Golden State Warriors. No Dwayne Wade, no Jim Butler, and then Paul Zipser, who started in place of Wade, went down with an ankle sprain. So predictably, the Bulls got their asses paddled. Not much to really talk about. Michael Carter-Williams was putrid, 3 and 4 in 25 minutes. With the other guys coming back, he might not even see the rotation at all, whereas Rajon Rondo had 12, 6 and 8 in 23 minutes. A good Rondo night, but don't get too overly hyped up for it. Jaren Grant had 12 points in his 25 minutes. He's looking better lately, but still just a deeper league sort of player, while Taj Gibson and Robin Lopez were both pretty good. 15 and 9 for Taj, while 17 and 10, and 4 assists for Big Rob Lopez. Onto the Warriors. Steph took a back seat, only took 11 shots in his 28 minutes, 13 points with 6 assists, while it was Durant with 22, 10 and 7 and 3 steals, and Klay Thompson with 28, 6 and 3 with 6 triples, who did the damage, and Draymond stuffed the stat sheet as well. He hit 5 triples, Draymond Green, 19 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, and got his customary steal and a block. But how about JaVale McGee? 16 minutes for JaVale, 13 and 6, 2 blocks, good performance. Good blocks stream while Zaza is out, and Zaza looks like he was going to be out until the All-Star break. So does David West. So you can stream McGee for blocks on the nights that they play, and he's a deep league addition, but he's not a guy that I'm just adding in a 12-teamer and going, yeah, let's go JaVale, let's do it for whatever. All right, that does it for the action from Wednesday. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back to preview the 5 games we've got coming up on Thursday in the NBA. See this if you're watching the video, but I feel like I'm just drenched in a layer of sweat. It is ludicrously hot here. I think it's about 37 degrees Celsius. I think we're talking, so that's about close to 100 Fahrenheit. And because I'm recording the pod, the air conditioner has to go off, so there's no noise in the background. And I'm glistening. Well, I feel like I am anyway. I can just feel the moisture forming on my forehead, so I do apologize for the shininess. Maybe I need to wear Pancake. Let's talk perfect DFS lineups on FanDuel. Jeff Teague, 49, and Dennis Schroeder at 48. Interesting to see the two Atlanta point guards, or former Atlanta point guards there, locking up those backcourt positions with very similar scores. At shooting guard, Sauce Castillo at 34.9 and Farton Will Barton at 44.9. The small forwards, Bojan Bogdanovic at 36 and Wiggo at 49. So many punt options here. Yeah, Wiggo, Bojan, Farton, they're guys that are just real punt options. Power forward, Blakey Griffin at 53.1 and Draymond at 40.6 and Andre Drummond at 55.4 for a total of 410.9, and that costs $59,700. On DraftKings, Jeff Teague 54.25, Kyle Korver 38.75, Farton Will Barton 45.75, Kylo Quinn at 38, Andre Drummond at 59.25, Dennis Schroeder 51.25, Wiggos at 51.25, and DeAndre Jordan at 51.75 for a total of $390.25, and that cost $49,700. All right, let's move into the games now and talk about them in a bit of detail. There are 5 that are on the slate for Thursday. The first one is Philadelphia and Orlando. No Joel Embiid for this one. We don't know if Richaun Holmes is going to play. He's dealing with an upper respiratory issue that cost him today's game. Aaron Gordon's the one we want to check on for Orlando, who has a bone bruise in his right foot that caused him to miss the second half of the last game. And Jeff Green, who
My name is Jeff.
missed the last game due to the birth of his child. So there are a couple of injuries now. If Gordon misses, Jeff Green becomes a good play. If both Gordon and Green miss, we're going to see Mario Hezonja. We're going to see more Evan Fournier. We might even see some Damjan Rudej, but I don't think he's going to be a huge DFS contributor. It'll be a lot more CJ Watson, a lot more Hezonja, I believe, in that scenario, as Fournier plays at the 3. Let's talk point guards in this game. We've got Lord Alfred Payton, who's at 6,300, has not been living up to that sort of price tag at all recently. And yes, the matchup against Philly is not a bad one, but I don't have tremendous faith in him being able to beat that price tag. If we flip him to DraftKings, where he's at 5,700, I think that's fine. I think he can easily get to 30 points. With their scoring system, it's not a tough matchup. It's a much better price for Payton, so he is definitely in play in that matchup. I would consider him a GPP FanDuel type of a player. TJ McConnell still at 5,200, has not been anywhere near that recently. Really tough to consider him a guy to use. At 47 on DraftKings, it's a little bit more appealing, but it's still not looking brilliant. And the backup, Sergio Rodriguez, Spanish Chocolate, and DJ Augustine, not really worth considering too much. Although Augustine, if we see that Gordon and Green are out, they'll play some Augustine-Payton backcourts. And DJ dropped 18 in the last game, and he's a minimum salary player. So if he got to 20, it could work out. He would be worth a look. He's at 3,000 on DraftKings as well. So obviously very cheap over there. At shooting guard, Sauce Castillo's at 3,600. Well, it obviously paid off today. He's got another decent matchup coming up here. I don't know if they keep him on the bench, but if he starts, he's a tough guy to use. If he comes off the bench, he produces at a much higher level. So I would absolutely consider him a GPP guy in this situation, especially at his low salary. He comes in at 3,300 on DraftKings, which is just very, very cheap, as I'm sure you're aware. Now, Evan Fournier is at 5,400. I really like that. He had 28 in the last game. I feel pretty good about him getting pretty close to 30 on most nights at the moment. Now, on DraftKings at 5,900, I'm not quite there with him. It's fine, but there's still a little bit more risk associated with Fournier. But he does get a bump if Gordo and Greeny are both out, which is a situation that's obviously got a chance of happening. Gerald Henderson started the last game, but he did nothing. While CJ Watson at 41, he gets a bump if those two players are out. Hezonja, minimum. You'd only want to GPP him if those guys are out. Even if they said he's starting, he hasn't really had a good game at all this season, a good enough game to return that sort of a value. So he would come into play as a GPP option. Bob Cobb's at 5,800 on FanDuel. No issues. Had 31 today. Now, you should feel pretty good about Covington getting 30 most nights. And on DraftKings, he's at 5,400. He would be, at this point, one of the guys, especially on DraftKings, that you go, okay, I want this guy in my lineup. Let's try and build around it. That's at this very early stage. Because as you see, when we get to one of the other games later on, there's a lot of weird shit that could go on in that Cleveland game, which we'll talk about pretty soon. Small forwards, Aaron Gordon, he's at 4,500. I wouldn't want to use Gordon anyway. Covington's a good defender. Gordon's up and down. He provides nothing. No. Jeff Green would be the player at 3,500. If he plays and Gordon is out, he is the one I would look at. He's a minimum salary player on FanDuel and is 4,000 on DraftKings. So the DraftKings has priced priced the Gordon absence into his price here. So he would still be worth looking at it at 4,000, but you'd love it at 3,500 on FanDuel if that's the case. Serge Ibaka at 6,000. Serge has been playing very well, averaging 33 across the last 5. The Philly matchup, it is a matchup that does reduce output for power forwards, but I'm not completely bothered by it. I think that he is a really good option still, while Ersan Ilyasova is just struggling somewhat, but at 5,600, I think that Ersan is definitely worth consideration. Probably not for cash, but he's worth a GPP type of a look. Sharich had a good game today at 4,300, though he only put up 24 points. Scored well, didn't do much else. Really don't see the upside in using him. At centre, Nikola Vucevic at 7,400. He dropped 50 in the last game, and he gets a brilliant matchup here. Go back to the well there. He's at 77 on DraftKings. No concerns really with Vooch, even though his salary has jumped. And Jahlil Okafor at 4,600. He dropped 34 today against the Spurs. A really good performance. Now he gets the Magic, which is not a tough one. We've got no Embiid. At 4,600, Okafor still is somewhat of a risk, but at that price, it's not really too much of a risk, and I would consider him in cash. And at 44 on DraftKings, the same story goes. Let's move now on to the next game. We've got Houston. They are taking on Charlotte. The Rockets are favoured by 4. The total is 224 points here, and we don't know if Cody Zeller is going to play. He's still dealing with that quad contusion that's cost him the last few games. Let's start by looking at the point guards. Let's start. If Cody's out, it's Frank Kaminsky time. He's at 4,900. Not an absolute must-play guy, but pretty close to it at that sort of a salary. He's been getting over 30 a game recently with that injury to Zeller. So he's someone that you would definitely have a look at and consider. The point guards, Pat Bev, nice bounce back in the last game, 32 points in that one. He's at 5,600. The matchup is fantastic for him. I would feel pretty good about getting Pat Bev in there. As for Kemba, 7,500, a massive price dip on FanDuel, down by 1,400. But now he takes on Patrick Beverley. He's averaging just 23 over the last 3, Kemba. Yes, he can go for 45, but I do not want anything to do with him in cash. And I think that he's a really good GPP guy to take a look at. I still don't love the scenario for him, though. At shooting guard, Eric Gordon's at 5,500. The numbers have been okay for Gordon, but this is a very, very positive matchup, so I'm on board with using him. And at 51 on DraftKings, it's pretty much paying for itself right off the bat, so I do really like him. Nick Batum's at 77, just a little bit expensive for me over on FanDuel. I think that's somewhat of a pass. He comes in at 76 on DraftKings, and it's not strong either. And Jim Harden's at 12.6. So you've got 2 real high-priced guys on this slate. We've got Jim and we've got Russ, and they're both 12,000 plus guys. If you've got the salary left over, which you generally, I think, will be able to do, you're getting these guys, or at least one of these guys in your lineup is going to be a real need. It's going to be a definite have to do. Now, who you put in there depends on what value you get in other positions. There's not like you must have Jim, you must have Russ. It's like, let's see how the rest of your lineup fits. And do you have the cash, and then do you have the room at point guard or shooting guard? Because I could say play Russ, right? Russ is your better option. Play him. But then the cheap shooting guards are shit. And whereas you could play Harden and get good value out of cheap point guards. I'm not saying that's the case today, but that's why I'm not going to say, Jim's in over Russ, no doubt, get him in, because it depends on where you've got the value in the other positions as to how they fit in. And that's, again, part of how I like to structure my lineups is to put the guys who go, this is the good value play, and then build other parts of the lineup out from there. So Harden's one of those high salary guys that, of course, we have to be paying attention to. At small forward, Trev Ariza had been in a slump, but he bounced back. He's at 5,400. He had 37 points in that last game. I don't think that there's huge upside in Trev. Hopefully this turns around his season that last game. Not feeling full confidence in deploying him in cash games just yet. Bellinelli or Kid Gilchrist for the Hornets. Kid Gilchrist at 5,500 just is too expensive, whereas Bellinelli is at 4,100, so that's a GPP option, I think, Marco. He obviously can get some shots up, especially if Cody's out and they're playing more Frank at the 5 and Kid Gilchrist at the 4. Power forwards, Ryan Anderson, 4,800. You know the drill for Rhino. GPPs, and that is literally it. 5-game min max is always a good way to look at it for Rhino. 43.7, 3.8. Can go off, can be terrible. GPPs. Marvin Williams has been putting up good numbers, but he's at 5,400, which takes away a lot of his upside, I believe. He's still been outproducing that, and it's a high-tempo game, so I wouldn't feel terrible about using Marv. I wouldn't feel great in tournaments. I don't think there's much upside there, but I would consider him as a cash play if I was getting desperate at that position. As I've already talked about, Frank the Tank, hard to use him unless Cody is out. At center, love Clint Capella here. Getting big minutes, averaging 31.5 over the last 3. He's at 5,200. The ease for this matchup is brilliant. Love him. On DraftKings, it's not so much love because he's priced up to $6,000. Still useful, but really want to smash it on FanDuel, and that's a great play to use him over there. All right, let's move on to the next game, and this is the one where I might as well throw my hands up in the air. It's the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. Ty Lue, when asked after the game, he said that he's probably going to sit Kyrie, LeBron, and Kevin Love. So when I've done the projections here, I'm assuming that Kyrie, Kevin Love, and LeBron James are all out. The last time that these 3 guys sat and they played against Memphis, there was value everywhere. And nobody did well. Everyone was terrible. Geordie McRae, Kay Felder, Channing Frye, Dick Jefferson, these guys were all shithouse. And that's the risk we run here. but there's going to be value just screaming at you, like sticking out like dog's balls, going, oh. So, most of the time, I think you want to look at them as GPP only guys. You can stack a few of them and try it that way, and then get maybe your Jim and your Russ into a lineup. And if it works, and if the Cavs keep it competitive and these guys go off, it's going to work in your favor. But working out how it's going to go down is a really tough process. The other thing that the Cavs can do is they could keep this ludicrous Tristan Thompson starting streak going, which they've done plenty of times. He comes in, he plays 2 minutes, gets the opening tip, and then sits out the rest of the game. As disingenuous as anything in sports records. And if they do that, they've got 7 other players. They'll have no Love, no James, no Irving, no Thompson, no Shumpert, no Smith, no Chris Anderson, no 15th man on the roster. They will have a lot of guys out. So let's try and work out what's going to happen here. It's tough. I don't know how it's going to happen because there's just so many variables here. We're assuming that all these 3 guys are out. And I'm assuming that Tristan Thompson's going to play. At point guard, Kay Felder is at 3,500. The projections really do like him. Even in only 25 minutes a game, he comes out as a guy that could get 20 points. And I don't see any reason why he couldn't get 20 points in 25 minutes. He's a guy that over his last 5 games is averaging 30 points per 36 minutes, giving 25 minutes, 20 points. It's a logical conclusion to come to. The matchup, though, against Russ Westbrook is not ideal, but he's a GPP guy. Speaking of Russ, 12,500. Everything I just said for Jim Harden just comes in here for Russ. The problem with this game is it could be an absolute massacre. So Russ might play 28 minutes, and that is something you do have to be concerned about. You could put it in a GPP, but I would feel hard. I feel really hard to do it, or I wouldn't feel hard. I would find it hard to put him into a cash lineup if all these Cavs players are out, because I just think that he wouldn't need to play as much. So that's somewhat of a concern as well. Any other point guards to talk about on this one? Nope. Shooting guard, Geordie McRae. Whatever I just said about Kay Felder, say it about Geordie McRae. Minimum salary player. If Kyrie, Love, and James aren't there, usage is like matter. It never disappears. It transfers. So it's got to transfer somewhere. And you know that Jordan McRae has no issue with taking a shot. So at 3,500, he's legitimately got 30-point upside. So he is a tournament guy. There's no question about that. Would I feel good about him in cash? Of course I wouldn't. I wouldn't feel terrible about putting one of these guys in a cash lineup. Maybe you put McRae in. Maybe you put Fry in. Probably less confident of putting Felder in. But I wouldn't be totally against it. But you can't go multiples of these guys, I don't think, in a cash lineup and have it really work out. Kyle Korver at 3,700 obviously had a big game today. Came on some red-hot shooting, but he's going to have to play more minutes if all these guys are out. He's at 3,700. You should feel more confident in Kyle Korver. And if you're looking for a cheap guy there, he becomes more of a cash play than some of those other guys, I think. DeAndre Liggins at minimum salary. Well, he's not a big fantasy producer at all. But if he gets 35 minutes, he could luck into 24 points. Another GPP type of an option. And on the other side of things, Vic Oladipo is at 6,400. A $700 price rise for Vic. It's making him not ideal. That's FanDuel pricing. He's at 59 on DraftKings. No problem. Love that over there. There's just so much odd value going around in this one. But Vic would be a really solid cash game shooting guard. The other player you want to look at is James Jones, who has played some decent games at times this year. I wouldn't feel great about using him, but he's a minimum salary contrarian tournament guy. There's just so many different options here. At small forward, Andre Robertson, another double-double in the last game. He's at 4,100, Robbo, averaging 27 across the last 3. I don't feel good with him in cash, but with Enes Kanter out, he is taking on that rebounding role. So you can use him. 3,800 on DraftKings. Why not? At least you know his role is going to be consistent. His production necessarily won't be, but when it's coming on defensive numbers, you feel a little bit better about it. So I feel okay about Andre Robertson, which is not a sentence that I thought I'd say. Dick Jefferson, 3,500. Again, a punt-worthy guy, but not as strong as, say, a Geordie McRae, I don't believe. Power forward, Channing Frye at 4,300. Have to like that one. You should feel good about Channing Frye getting over 25 points. Really like that. 34 on DraftKings makes him... I've got him listed as a GPP guy. I think that almost makes him a cash guy in hindsight as well. At 3,400, assuming all these guys are out. There's just so many moving parts in this matchup. Now, this is a real test for the Billy Donovan, take your turn, Enes Kanter replacement scenario. It's held up, but now we're up to Joffrey Laverne's turn. It was Sabonis the game before. It went Laverne. It went Sabonis, it went Grant, it went Laverne. It went Sabonis, it went Grant, and now we're back to Laverne. Does it happen again? It makes it hard to consider using Sabonis at minimum salary. He played 10 minutes in the last game, and it's not his turn. But we don't know. He could have a crack at it, and he's a minimum salary player, so GPPs, you do have to consider him. But I'm working on this theory that it won't be him. So I would leave him alone. At centre, this is where it gets interesting. 3,600 for Joffrey Laverne. Is it his turn? He had a 26-pointer the other day. He's averaging 19 across the last three. Why wouldn't we have a look at Joffrey at 3,200 on DraftKings? If he's getting these mid-20s minutes, which it appears to be his turn, which is absolutely stupid as that sounds to say in a professional league, it's what's happening. He has GPP upside. Don't trust that theory in cash, though. Do not trust it. I wouldn't trust it. And it's my theory, so don't go with it. Steve Adams is at 6,100. He should be good for 30 points. I don't think that he's got much GPP upside, but he should be good for 30. And he's at 5,800 on DraftKings. Not a concern there with him. Or Tristan Thompson. The concern I have with Thompson is he plays those 2 minutes and then doesn't play again. So at 5,600, he could put up a good line, but he could put up 3 points because he plays 2 minutes. He's at 49 on DraftKings. If we know that he's playing the whole game, then yeah, he's fine at that sort of a salary. But we just don't know. And this is the game that's going to just confound everyone for DFS tomorrow until we get more information. So there's definitely things that could change there, but that's my early look at what could be an absolute nightmare of a game on for DFS purposes and for watching purposes. Speaking of nightmares for DFS, Utah at Dallas. The Jazz are favoured by 2 with a total of 192. That is as disgusting as it gets. We're talking 30 points less than the Rockets-Hornets game. Darren Williams is doubtful to play, and Seth Curry is listed as probable. So we're going to get more Yogi Ferrell minutes, but we've seen the league start to adjust to Yogi. His production has been down, and his salary is high. So that's a little bit of a concern with him. But let's talk point guards. He's at 5,700 on FanDuel, so they've dropped it by 400. He got nowhere near that in the last game. 5,700 still relatively high, but low pace, good defense. I don't really think at that sort of a price that you can say I'm all in on Yogi Ferrell. Or if you are, you're from Indiana, or you've got more faith in him. On DraftKings, he comes in at 5,000. Now, that's okay. Now, that, I think, is a situation that you should feel more confident with than, say, a Geordie McRae or a Kay Felder in cash at 5,000. I feel all right about that. Not a bad price tag for Kevin Ferrell there. George Hill, 6,100. The matchup is just an absolute nightmare in terms of the pace. Pretty much no one really in this matchup screams great value. So you can do much better than Georgie Hill. Shooting guard, Seth Curry's at 5,300, has not been hitting that sort of a value. Now he's dealing with a sore shoulder and a shit matchup. Forget about Seth. Or Alec Burks has been playing all right, but still not enough for me to consider, even though he's a minimum salary player. Wes Matthews at 5,800. I like the GPP upside for Wes. He's scoring 33 over the last 3, had 34 in the last game. I think he should be able to get 30, so I like him there. I would even maybe look to cash. The problem is just the pace of this game is a real nightmare. As I've said plenty of times, the pencil's at 6,400, no GPP upside, a solid, decent-ish cash play without being spectacular at 6,000 on DraftKings, while Gordo Hayward's at $8,000. In a GPP where you've got some of these low-price Cavs in there, Gordo is one of the better players on the entire board. He only had 31 in the last game, which was today in that blowout of the Pelicans. But he's averaging 40 across his last 5, so you should feel pretty good about him getting 35-ish. I would say would be a good estimation for Gordo. If we look at him over on DraftKings, he's at 7,300, so the same sort of stuff sticks there with him. At power forward, Dirk at 5,600. Not strong on Dirk at 5,600 on DraftKings, but I like him at 5,000. So that's on FanDuel, 5,600. On DraftKings, he comes in at 5,000. He had 42 in the last game. I feel pretty good about Dirk being able to get me 26 or 27 points on most nights. Derek Favors at 5,300. Obviously, a good couple of performances in a row for Derek, but they haven't been worthwhile at 53. Also, that's not true. The one before was, but yet today's game wasn't at 5,300. Just a game this is a game in general that you just want to avoid. So I don't think Derek Favors is going to be one of those solid options. Dwight Powell is as up and down as they come. Throw him in a GPP and he occasionally goes off, but literally being able to predict it is impossible given the way that Carlisle runs that rotation. And at centre, Rudy Gobert is at $8,000. Playing well, but not really getting to the 40-point mark, but he's had a really good record against Utah. And he comes in at 6,700 on, not against Utah, against Dallas. He comes in at 6,700 on DraftKings, and that's fantastic. And that is a price point that you should absolutely attack. Now, Salah Mejri in the same sort of boat as Dwight Powell. All right, let's wrap up today's podcast. We've got one game left, and it is the Boston Celtics. They are taking on a back-to-back, the Portland Trail Blazers. The Blazers are favored by 1.5, and we've got a good total again here, 220.5 points. Evan Turner is out for the next 5 to 6 weeks with that broken hand. At point guard, Damian Lillard is at 8,500. He gets the defensive stylings of Isaiah Thomas to worry about. Lillard has been a little bit more consistent lately, averaging 42 across the last 3. I don't have full faith in him to go for cash, but on a slate like this, maybe you do lean that direction. But I still really love him as a GPP upside point guard at that price of 8,500. That's on FanDuel, by the way. If we look at Lillard over on DraftKings, he's at 8,900, and that's far from appealing. That's a very high price tag over there for Lillard. Still just GPPs, but no way that I'd really consider that as a cash option. Now, Isaiah Thomas at 10,500. Too expensive. You know, I gave you a whole outline of this yesterday of why I think it's too expensive. He's going to be good. He's going to put up 40. 10,500, not enough. Needs to do more, needs to do 50, needs to do 50 plus, and I just don't have faith on a back-to-back on the road of Isaiah Thomas getting me 50 again. I'll be happy to be proved wrong. I don't think I will be. 10,000 for him on DraftKings as well. Yeah, a little bit better, but still not really going into a player that I would throw into a player pool or anything along those lines. I like CJ McCollum at 8,200. If you don't want to go for Jim Harden, then CJ becomes an option. Not totally strong though, while Alan Crabb at 3,500 is a good GPP option. With Evan Turner out, he should get a bump, but he is inconsistent. We always must remember that. But at minimum salary, if he's going to play 30 minutes, he is absolutely worth taking a peek at. Over on FanDuel, he comes in, on DraftKings at 4,200. There's no way that I would use him at 4,200. In a tournament, sure. But at cash, he is just a write-off at 4,200. The small forwards, Mo Harkless at 38, should start in place of Evan Turner. So at 3,800, that makes him a bargain. And that's a situation where I'd go, I like that. Let's lock that in. Let's build a lineup around that and see where we go. That has more value than a Geordie McRae or a Kay Felder. You feel more confident in Mo Harkless in that sort of a scenario. Jaylen Brown, probably not. Jay Crowder at 6,500, very high price tag for very limited results from Crowder recently. 6,200 on DraftKings if you're desperate, but he definitely wouldn't be a guy to model a lineup around. Al-Farouq Aminu also gets a bump. He dropped 30 in the last game. He's at 5,400. I think you feel okay about him. I don't think he's got a huge upside and he's a little bit risky, so that does take him out of a lot of consideration. But on a 5-game slate, he shouldn't be totally written off. Noah Vonleh should be, though. At centre, Mason Plumlee. He's at 6,800 over on FanDuel. Pretty solid matchup for him going up against the Celtics. He's been consistent. That's okay. Al Horford at 7,600. Forget that. No interest there. Whereas on DraftKings, he comes in at 7,200. So there's a bit of value for Horford at 72 on DraftKings in a matchup against the Blazers, but he has been quite inconsistent recently. Mason Plumlee is at 64 on DraftKings. No concern with using him. Really do like him there. All right. Let's wrap this up so I can go turn this air conditioner back on. Let's look at the picks of the day. On FanDuel, lots to choose from. Kay Felder at 3,500. You know, I've talked about that ad nauseum. Pat Bev, 56, and Dame Lillard, 85. The shooting guards, Kyle Korver, 37, Eric Gordon, 55, and CJ McCollum, 82. At small forward, Mo Harkless, 38, Bob Covers at 58, and Gordo Hayward's at 8,000. At power forward, Channing Frye's at 43, Serge Barker is 6,000, and at centre, Joffrey Laverne at 36, Clint Capella at 52, and Rudy Gobert at 8,000. On DraftKings, Kay Fowler, 3,000, Yogi Ferrell, 5,000, Russ Westbrook, 12,700, shooting guard Geordie McRae, 3,000, Eric Gordon, 5,000, and Jim Harden, 12,300. The small forwards, Kyle Korver, 39, Bob Covett, 54. At power forward, Channing Frye, 34, Dirk at 5,000, and at centre, Joffrey Laverne, 32, and Steve Adams, 5,800. On the Aussie sites, Moneyball, Kay Felder, 35, Georgie Hill, 56, and Dame Lillard, 89. At shooting guard, Kyle Korver, 4,000, Evan Fournier, 51, and McCullum at 82. The small forwards, Mo Harkless, 37, Bob Covers at 61, and Gordo Hayward's at 81. The power forward, Channing Frye, 39, and Aminu's at 53. And at centre, Jali Okafor, 47, Clint Capella, 57, and Gobert at 86. On Draft Stars, Kay Felder, 5,000, Yogi Ferrell, 86, and Dame Lillard, 14,850. Shooting guard Geordie McRae, 5,000, CJ McCollum, 12,350, and Jim Harden at 22,450. The small forwards, Korver's at 63, Bob Covers at 10,150, and Nick Batum's at 15,1. The power forwards, Channing Frye, 7,250, Mason Plumlee, 10,850, and Nick Vucevic at 14,400. And at centre, Joffrey Laverne, 73, and Steve Adams, 9,200. We are done. Follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. And if you've got a sec, tell your friends. Share the podcast, social media, Facebook, Twitter, and leave a review on iTunes. It does help the show out a lot. We are done here, guys. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Charles Oakley.